Hey everybody, this is Andy with RS Xperience, and today I am going to review this 2020 Mclaren 600Lt Spider in this amazing Vega blue color. I'm going to do a walk around to the exterior, I'll review the interior, and then I'll take this sucker out for a drive. Stay till the end where I'll give you my initial thoughts on the new to me 600Lt Spider. Hey, I'm Andy, a high-performance car enthusiast with a passion for well-engineered automobiles. I love to drive mountain roads with like-minded enthusiasts, along with sharing driving tips and techniques. The Mclaren 600Lt Spider was introduced in one model year, and that was 2020. McLaren never said how many they produced. All they said is, hey, we're going to produce it for 1 year. There's some data out there on some of the McLaren forums that suggests there's about 345 in the US. If you have other data that says something different, hit me up in the comments below. So the name LT stands for long tail, and that relates back to the McLaren racing heritage. Essentially, this car is 74 millimeters longer than the Mclaren 570S, which it is based off of. So there's kind of the long tail comes into play. This particular car is powered by the popular Mclaren V8. This is a 3.8 liter twin turbo V8, putting out 592 horsepower at 7,500 RPM and 457 pound-feet of torque between 5,500 and 6,500 RPM. And this thing revs all the way up to 8,500 RPMs. I think that's pretty darn good. This McLaren comes with a 19-gallon fuel tank. Just for comparison, in the RS, I had the extended fuel tank that was 23.7. So in this one, we're probably gonna have to stop and fill it up with gas a little bit more frequently. The Mclaren 600Lt has a starting price of $256,500. Tell me that doesn't sound crazy, $250,000. But with some options, you can easily spec it up to over 300,000. So kind of the same price of a new 992 GT3. This McLaren will do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds, has a top speed of 201 miles per hour. The McLaren LT weighs in at 3,095 pounds, and that is with fuel and liquids. I know you hear a lot about dry weight. This is with fuel and liquids, 3,095 pounds or 1,404 kilograms. So this is kind of on par with the RS. The RS was probably about 3,150. So this may be a few pounds lighter than the RS. So the front end here on this McLaren, it actually looks pretty cool. It's pretty simple. So we have this extended splitter on this versus say the 570 as part of the 600Lt. This thing sits about 4 inches off the ground. Actually on the side here, it's probably closer to 3.5. It's a little bit lower on the edge here. This is carbon fiber. It's part of Carbon Pack 2 for the exterior. Carbon Pack 2 includes the front splitter, the rear bumper and diffuser, as well as the side rocker panels. We have the parking sensors up in the front. I think you can see the little doohickeys, and here's the lights with the kind of that McLaren boomerang effect that is very popular there in McLaren. We have our logo on the front. So open up this front trunk. This is 5.3 cubic feet, or about 150 liters of storage. I've actually got my cleaning supplies in here because I'm actually getting ready to head down the mountains. First time taking this car in the mountains. I'll talk a little bit about more storage in a second, but your owner's manual and stuff actually goes in a little netting up in the front here because this car doesn't have a glove box. Let's talk about the side of the car. There's a lot going on here. So the first thing you'll see, we have carbon fiber mirror caps, and we have this carbon fiber intake, which is part of Pack 1. That's Carbon Pack 1. And then down below, you can see the carbon fiber rockers. Here is part of that Carbon Pack 2 I spoke about earlier. You can see it has these winglets that help, channel the air. You know, the lightering is good. These winglet things, they kind of look boy racer. Yeah, I know you could argue the whole car looks boy racer. I'm not a huge fan, but they're okay. This part here is really cool. We're kind of bringing in air from coming out from under that wheel and then feeding into this air intake into the engine here. And then, you know, the trick you all see is this bridge here, this piece of body work. And the door opener is actually right under here is where the door, it's just a little button you push, the window will release, and then this door opens up. The door is actually pretty light. This car has soft closed doors, so you just get it down, it'll close, and the window rolls up here. So that's a little bit about the side of the car. Gas fill is here. It doesn't have a cap, which I kind of like when these cars today don't have caps in them. That works out really good. So this particular car, the 600LT, has a 105-inch wheelbase. So wheelbase, if you would, from the center here to the center back here is 105 inches. Just to put some reference, the GT3 RS was 97 inches, so this has 8 inches longer. So what's the big deal, Andy? And wider wheelbase is going to give you a more smoother ride, but also additional stability at higher speeds. So let's talk a little bit about the wheels and the brakes. So this car has a staggered setup. So it has a 19 by 8-inch wheel up front and a 20 by 11-inch wheel in the rear. It is wearing two 25/35s up front and two 85/35s in the rear. So I'd like to get more rubber on the road. I know I can go up 10 millimeters. It's debatable on these rims if I could go up 20, say to 245 in the front and a 305 in the rear. But I think this car, for me, I think it needs a little more rubber on the road. But, you know, hey, we'll see. So this car is fitted with standard carbon ceramic brakes, front and rear. So the front has a 390 millimeter rotor with 6-piston calipers. In the rear is 380 millimeters with a 4-piston caliper. These have the optional polished brake calipers. So with Mclaren, you can get these in a whole lot of different colors, these brake calipers. These are polished with the raised Mclaren lettering. I think it looks really sleek, and it kind of blends in with the diamond cut of the wheels as well. So this Mclaren roof is made of carbon fiber, but it's painted in this popular Mclaren. It's called Palladium Gray. You can get this in carbon fiber. I believe you could also get it painted body color, but I think the way the person spec'd this car actually came out pretty good. I like this color. This top will open in 15 seconds at speeds up to 25 miles per hour. I think that's pretty much it on the side, but there was a lot going on here. All right, let's go take a look at the back of the car. The 600LT has double wishbone suspension front and rear, and it sits about 8 millimeters lower than the 570S. Mclaren actually uses an open differential, right? They use braking to help rotate the car and to help, you know, if one wheel is spinning, you know, that type of thing. They're using the braking system to help with that. So a little something there I wanted to share with you. So let's get back to the bumper. So this is another beautiful part, Carbon Pack 2. We have this whole upper bumper area in carbon fiber, and then all of the splitter underneath the splitter, the diffuser, the fins on the diffuser underneath. We have a lot of places here. This is really cool. This is actually metal. You know, it kind of looks like the headlight, but this little Mclaren boomerang shape is the actual tail light and the turn signal. The rest of this is all for releasing heat. In fact, on the bottom side of this diffuser, there's screening in between each one of these fins. There's actually screening there to evacuate the heat out of the back of the car. So we have a carbon fiber wing here. Again, this is painted in this palladium gray. In this center section here, this is some type of like a ceramic material, basically so that the exhaust, when you're shooting your flames out, you don't melt the carbon fiber here. And then this obviously has the top mounted exhaust. This is all screening inside here to evacuate that heat. And what's really nice about this is, you know, again, a little bit lighter weight. is the exhaust is probably like only about that long because the engine's like right there. So it helps with the lightweightness of the car. This area here is where you would refill your oil and add any coolant in there. So this takes a T25 Torx, and they give that to you in the little baggy thing up in the trunk of the car. So this way, if you're out and you have to add some oil in there, you have to remove these little Torx screws in order to get in there. So overall, I think this is a pretty stylish car. Well, hell, that's why I bought it. But anyway, let's go take a look at the inside, because the inside's a little bit different. Let's talk about the seats in the 600LT. So there are 3 options of seats in the car. So one is these electrically powered heated seats. There is a P1 seat, and there is a Senna seat. In my perfect world, I would have wanted the P1 seats, but I couldn't find any cars that were spec'd the way I like that had the P1 seats. In fact, of the cars out there for sale, I think there's only maybe 3 or 4, if that even have the P1 seats. So this seat here, what I do like about this seat is it does have Alcantara on the centers, and it has fairly decent side bolsters, so it's not as bad. I thought it was gonna be, you know, maybe like Porsche 18 way, but I don't know, these feel pretty good so far. The one wonky thing on here is the controls for the seat are on the inside. Like everybody else in the world puts them on the outside, so it's real easy. You can look over and see and move it. Here they put them on the inside. So you may think, oh, well, it's on the inside because, you know, left-hand drive, are they all on the right side? No, the other one's on this side here. So anyway, it's one of those things, you know, you look at the manual, you see where they are, you memorize it, and, you know, I think you figure it out. Plus you set the memory and you never mess with it again. Anyway, it's a little wonky feature on the seats. Okay, next I'm going to talk about this center console here, and this is where all the fun stuff is going on. So what we have down here is we have obviously a release for the hood, locking the doors. This little window that's behind the seats here, you can raise and lower that. So what's nice is if you don't want to put the top down, but you want to hear that engine out there, you can lower it. So that controls the control for raising and lowering the roof is here, as well as your hazards and your drive, reverse, and neutral selection. The other thing is your handling and powertrain controls. So you have basically normal, sport, and track on handling, and then you have normal, sport, and track on your power. So on the handling, I usually ride in normal and put my power in sport. So I get more sportier shifts, but I get the smoothest suspension. Put it in sport suspension, obviously tightens it up. And then in track, you can do different degrees of removing the traction control and the ESC in here as well. And then on the powertrain, the same thing. The other thing on the powertrain that's interesting is they have this thing called inertia push. Those of you out there that have a 2016 GT3 RS and you're on the track, PDK Sport Auto, and that thing shifts at 9,000, you know that jolt you get, you know, in the car? That's what this does. They call it inertia push, like, hey, we do that. Something the way they're, the fuel in the cylinders, etc. But you get a little kick in the pants. Not too bad, but that's what it reminds me of. Another thing with this is in order to change anything here, you have to hit this active button. I guess they don't want you playing around with these buttons, so you have to deliberately hit this active button. And once it's active, you can select those, as well as you can select your launch. So for launch control, you can select that. And also for manual transmission, so if you want to use the paddles on the steering wheel, you can go to manual with a push of the button. But again, you have to hit this active button. So that was a lot. Let's move on. Let's talk about storage. So we talked about the trunk. So in here, I mentioned there is no glove box, but there are some storage areas. So one is in the door pockets, there's this little fold down thing. It's actually pretty deep. You can get some sunglasses and some other stuff in there if you wanted to. So there's a little storage there. As I said, there is no glove box. But under here, there's like a little tray where you can put these 2 little manuals, like they're this big. One is the warranty manual, one is the Iris, which is their version of their infotainment. the iris control can go there. Down in the center here, we have a cup holder in the front here. We have a cup holder here. We have our little tiny console here, and inside the console are 3 USBs, a live in, jack, lack of a better term, and a 12-volt control. And then in between the seats, there's also a little net in the back here. That's where I keep my registration and insurance. But that's it for storage in here. On the steering wheel, we have these extended carbon fiber shift paddles, which I really like. And I wish Porsche would just make those standard or even make them an option so people don't have to go out and buy these aftermarket ones. I think the Porsche shift paddles are just too small. The other thing I like about these is they're on a rocker. So they move with the steering wheel, okay? Some others, they stay on the column. These do move with the steering wheel, but they're on a rocker, which means that, so if upshift is on the right, you can downshift by just pushing it away from you. So if you had something in your hand, you could literally push it away from you to downshift, which is kind of a nice feature. This steering wheel does have a flat bottom, and its diameter, it's smaller than the RS, I believe. I'm getting used to it a little bit because I'm so used to driving the CS, and the M2 CS has that really fat, chubby steering wheel. So when I come in here, sometimes it feels thinner, but once I'm in it for a little bit, it feels really good. The stalks are pretty standard. On the right side, you have your wipers and your wash and your quick wipe. And then down below, you have your cruise control setting. On the left side, I've got, high beam, flash, and whatnot, as well as your turn signal. And down at the bottom, you have your menu control stalk. A lot of this is very similar to Porsche. So the kind of the setup, how it works is a little different, but the setup with the stalks is somewhat familiar. So it's just getting used to the menu system and the settings, but some of the other functionality is pretty familiar. Okay, next up, another couple things real quick. On just right of the steering wheel are the mirror adjustments, where you can set your mirrors on either side. It's also where you can fold the mirrors in. Again, in settings, you could have that automatic, so when you lock the door, the mirrors automatically fold in. Or if you want to fold them in manually, there's a place here to do that. This does have the ability to do the tilting rear view mirrors when you put the car in reverse, and you have the option of doing the passenger side or both if you want to. To the left of the steering wheel, we have the headlight controls, auto, etc. There's a fog light control as well. That's more for the rear fog light. And then there's also the emergency brake. And I got to tell you a little story on this emergency brake. It's an electric brake, right? And so I'm old school. So you guys out there, you probably get a chuckle out of this. So this one here, to control it, you pull it towards you to engage, and you push it to release. Now, you guys, old school, remember the old cars that had the manual emergency brake that you had to pull that thing and went, grrr, and to release it, sometimes you pulled the button towards you and it released it. This is kind of like the opposite of that. I know I just gave away my age and you guys are all chuckling and whatnot. And then lastly, McLaren steering is hydraulic. So there's no electronic power assist, no e-pass system here. Two things. This steering is as good as Porsche, as good. I don't know if it's better yet. I don't have enough miles in it. And the shifts on the, it's a 7-speed dual clutch transmission. And the shifts are lightning fast. I think they're as fast as the RS. So there we go. Steering, transmission, paddles, all the controls here. Next up, let's talk a little bit about the infotainment. In the center here, we have infotainment system. This one is called Iris. This is a bit old and dated, but it does work just fine. It just doesn't have all the fancy, some of the niceties. No Apple CarPlay, no Android Auto. You have the radio, you have Bluetooth, so you can connect your phone, you can use it for telephone calls, you can stream music, so all those types of things you can do. You have your navigation, you can store stuff, you can import your contacts, all the stuff I think you guys are familiar with. You do control the aircon through here, and I'm not a big fan of that, but there is a button here, at least there's a button to get to the aircon. And then once you're in there, it's fairly intuitive. I just don't like having to change the temperature, sliding my finger up and down, or tapping it. But the other buttons are pretty easy to use. I mean, overall, it's really not that bad. It's simple. It's basic, no frills. We don't have like a 10-inch or 12-inch screen in here, but overall it's fine. The backup camera shows up in the display, and the resolution isn't that great. I mean, it's good. It's a backup camera, because seeing over your shoulder, like where the B and C pillars would be, yeah, visibility is not the greatest out the back. So you're using your mirrors and you're using the backup camera when you're in reverse. So just to wrap up with two other things. One is the instrument display. It is pretty decent. It does change. The RPM gauge tweaks a little bit between sport and track. One then goes to just a series of lines to shift that RPM, and then it shows in the sport, it makes the gearing the predominant number, as opposed to comfort, it has the speed as the predominant number shown. And then the dial, it has your other settings in there. You can get tire temperature as well as tire pressure. So I think that's kind of cool to have tire temperatures there as well, especially on track. I did like that. And then all the other settings, my gosh, I mean, you could set this thing 9 ways to Sunday, but I'm not sure it's any different than the RS had a lot of different settings as well. The clarity, the resolution of it is decent. I mean, I think it's just fine. So that's a little on the display. And then lastly, all of this interior is Alcantara. This particular one has this midnight blue stitching, which I think looks really cool. And then the inside of the doors here, the Alcantara is actually a midnight blue stitch, as is on some of the areas of the console here. So overall, I think it's tastefully done. It's pretty simple interior. When you're in this car, this is about driving. This is all the joy of driving. And speaking of that, what do you say we get out of here and we take this thing out on the road, and I give you some of my initial impressions. All right, let's go for a drive. Some initial impressions here. As I'm driving on this road, little twists and turns. I'm just gonna be honest, I wish these seats were a little more supportive in the shoulder area. Down on the hips, I think they're fine. The steering is like amazing. I have to maybe slow my hands down a little bit. Like, I want to put more into it, and I don't need to put more steering input in. So that is something I'm kind of adjusting to here. The power is like, yeah, I mean, the power is crazy. The throttle, the pedal, the gas is very modulating, I guess, is pretty easy. I mean, right now I'm 3,000 RPMs, and I think in these turbo cars you probably need to be stay up in the RPM range, just like the RS. The RS was a dog, like below 4,000, like 3,000. If you got on the gas, it was like a dog. It just didn't want to go anywhere. And I think these cars are probably kind of similar. Visibility out is fantastic. I mean, seeing the road, you're like, boom, it's like right there. I do like this visibility forward. The rear view mirrors are fine. The view out the back mirror, I think, is fine. It's just when you try to look over your shoulders, because you have this high back here, you just don't have as good a visibility there. One of the things driving along in the car that I'm, getting the feel of is this carbon tub, and it's very rigid, right? So it, like, anything that's attached to it is probably going to give because the car is not giving. So what that means is there's, little rattles and vibrations. When I say little, they come and go. They're not always persistent, which is kind of weird. You get it, then all of a sudden you hit a certain RPM or whatever, and then that vibration goes away. One of the things that McLaren doesn't do is they don't overboost their brakes. So when you apply the brakes, you kind of got to get your foot into it a little bit. I mean, once you find where the modulation is, you can kind of figure that out. But you gotta put a little bit of foot into it. It's not bad, it's just something different to get used to. Where the M2 CS, those brakes are like way touchy. I mean, that car, I'm still learning how to drive that M2 CS. I get on those brakes sometimes, I feel like I'm gonna go through the windshield. But these are nice, but you gotta get some foot into it. I have to adjust the seat a little bit because when I'm driving, I feel like I'm leaning forward as opposed to being back. I may need the seat a little more upright. Maybe that'll help with my shoulders. And then if I pull the belt down and lock the belt in when I'm driving Spirited, that may help as well. So those are a couple things that I'll play around with. There you have it. There's my take on the exterior of the car, the drive. I just need some more time in it. My thoughts are, I do love it. It's every time you get in it, it feels like an occasion, and it's fun. It's fun at any speed. I mean, the RS was great. I love the RS. I'm a Porsche fanboy, but you really had to be moving along for it to really be fun. This car here, like even at 50 or 60 miles an hour, it feels like a lot of fun. Hey, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. Any comments or questions, hit me up in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have about the car. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay healthy and stay safe.